Okay. So this is our last session, Positive Solutions for Families, session 6, and we're so glad that you're here and that we're hopefully you're learning some at least new things that you might want to try and do with your kiddos as we move along. So hopefully it's all going well for you so far. So today we're going to talk really probably a lot more in depth about strategies to deal with really challenging behaviors that continues even though you're using all the things that we've talked about. So, if you're really seriously, consistently using the tools that we've talked about, typically you don't see any of these big behaviors anymore, but sometimes you do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies about what happens when you do. And also last week, we talked about a lot of things last week, didn't we? Does anybody want to share any of their, I don't know, I would like to say, does anyone want to share their successes? But it also doesn't have to be necessarily successes. If anyone wants to share anything from last week, I know we talked a lot about redirections and different strategies to help. Remember, we talked about knowing what's reasonable, planning ahead, stating expectations in advance. So there's a lot of things that we discussed, and we asked you to write down 3 things that you would try and do this week. And I was wondering if anyone had a chance to do that, and if anyone was willing to share something that they tried this week. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and just jump in if you feel like you want to share. Okay. I'm not going to make anyone. I don't want to make this feeling like it's pressure. I want to make it feel like you're enjoying kind of getting the information. So, okay, we'll dive into the information for this week then. So, well, again, how is it going just in general, not necessarily specifically strategies that you use, but thinking about how is it going in general? Is it going well for you? Are you struggling? Are there specific things that are happening that maybe we can lend to give you some thoughts about? Anybody want to share?
That's all of us. So if this is one of the really good things about these groups is that if sometimes another parent has a great idea for a parent that they've tried and has worked really well. So this is we'd love to do some brainstorming.
If you tried a strategy and it actually worked, how did it feel for you as the parent?
I did try the strategies you gave me for the dinner time squealing last week, and I think it worked a lot better than I expected. Having the conversation before dinner when they were both kind of sitting quietly, playing, talking about, okay, here's how dinner is going to go, and here's the rules for dinner, and if you can't follow the rules, here's what you're going to lose. And my 2-year-old, of course, I cut him a lot of slack. But my 5-year-old did a really good job of not jumping into the fray when my 2-year-old was trying to pull her in, and kind of looking at me and thinking about it. So it was definitely positive, and did work pretty well.
How did it feel for you? Did it feel kind of like, did you get a little bit of a high from it? Like, wow, this could work.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And it's definitely, I think the key is the having the conversation beforehand, and describing, this is what's going to happen, this is how we're going to do it, and if you do this, then this is what's going to happen. And that felt really good. The big struggle is that it just seems like no matter what, they always will find something that I didn't think about addressing. Like, oh, well, I'm not squealing at the table anymore, but I'm going to go climb on the cat tree with dirty hands now because I wasn't told specifically that I can't do that.
Right. So it does kind of give you the ideas though, like, okay, every time you see that new behavior, okay, now I got to take a step back and add that in, right? Add that in as one of the things that, and think about again, when you're even sitting at the table, you really want to be specific about what they should do. And like you said, then they'll find that one thing that, that was never mentioned, that they'll push the boundaries. That's their job, right? That's what kids do. They push every boundary. And it's interesting, as you say, like the 2-year-old. So I wouldn't expect, this is kind of going back to the whole idea of knowing expectations. 2-year-olds really don't sit at the dinner table for very long. I mean, they typically will sit for, a little while. And maybe if it's something really good that they like to eat, so there might be reasons why they're sitting there, but most 2-year-olds won't sit for very long. But a 5-year-old can. A 5-year-old can get through a dinner. So, and again, if it's something that they like. So yeah, so it is, it's not going to work every time. But I like the fact that you just are like thinking about, all right, how do I plan for this? How do I give them their expectations? I think it might work if you even go a step further and, again, write it on a piece of paper, draw out what your expectations are of what you want them to do, because kids that little can't read, and put it right next to the dinner table. And you might even want to, at the dinner table, put like a big no sign over the cat tree. Like, nope, this is not for anybody to touch. Now that you know that that's a thing.
Well, and the issue with maybe that is that again might be limited, and you don't want to get into the point where you have a list of like 20 rules. So maybe if it can be like stay at the table until the timer is done. So if you have one of those old-fashioned egg timers that's just, a couple of minutes, sometimes that's a good way to, or if you can get a 5-minute one or whatever you want to do. The other thought that I might have you think about is, and I think we talked a little bit about this last week, is, I feel like it's a control thing. Maybe there's a way you can especially have your 5-year-old help make one of the rules. So maybe it would be there's a privilege that she gets. Your 5-year-old's a daughter, correct? Yeah. So yeah, maybe there's like a privilege that she can get if she's able to do it, and that way she's sharing a little bit of the control of what's going on. She might adhere more as she gets a little older and matures a little bit. She's going to anyway, but that might help a little bit to have it be something that might work. So if it's, I would think about the rules and like you stay in your seat. But again, like Karen said, it might be really hard to stay in your seat for 10 minutes if you're 2. So even though that doesn't seem like a big deal to us, but just a couple little thoughts to throw out there. This is an ever-changing world.
Yes.
We have to, it is for sure an ever-changing world too,
Yeah.
but the world of parenting is ever-changing. You're constantly having to upgrade. Here's the really good thing, Andy. You're working on these things when your kids are 2 and 5 and not 12 and 15, because you're going to be so grateful that these things were taken care of now, when you can really kind of do more control. Because a 15-year-old, you have much more limited control over what happens, right? So that's just my little piece.
I go into that saying I totally agree, because the idea of building these pieces right now when they're younger, you're establishing some really good foundation pieces that you have to build on. That's exactly what you want to be doing. So although it feels like a lot of work, I think that you will be thankful when your kids are in their teens that you've put in some of these pieces. Definitely. So when we think about those challenging behaviors, so I'm not necessarily thinking that you're going to have big challenging behaviors, but I really do think that there can be times when there is some. Christine, this is your slide. So
Yeah. So we're going to start by looking at some descriptions of children who are having challenging behavior. One of them is actually at the dinner table. I'm going to read some of the story. Actually, I'm going to read the first story to you, and then I'm going to break down that first story into a couple of different areas. And then a little while later, Karen's going to read us a few more. So while I'm reading this first one, we want you to think about what the child's behavior is saying, okay? What is the child's behavior saying? What are they trying to tell us? So here is the first one. This is the story of Angelo. So Angelo is playing with his blocks while Mom cooks dinner. Mom says, "Angelo, dinner is ready. Come to the table." Angelo comes to the table after a few minutes, gets up, grabs his sandwich, and goes over to play with his blocks. Mom said, Angelo, come back to the table. Angelo comes to the table to drink some juice, and then he leaves again. Mom tells Angelo again to come back to the table. Angelo throws his sandwich, then falls on the floor, kicking and screaming. So that's the story of what we're telling. We don't know how old Angelo is, but I would assume he's relatively young. So if we go to the next slide, this is just telling us really those specific actions that we see. So it's taking off the rest of the pieces. So the first thing is Angelo's mother tells him that it is time for dinner. She begins to guide him to sit in his chair. He falls on the floor, begins kicking and screaming, and shouts no. His mother tells him to stop, tries to pick him up. He kicks her, and then she sends him to his room. So those are the actual actions. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take each piece and we're going to pull it up into those what happened before, what happened during, and what happened after. So we can really take them apart. So here is the before piece. The first thing that happened, Angelo's mother tells him it's time for dinner. She begins to guide him to sit in the chair. So that's what happened before. Let's take a little closer look and what does this tell you about the behavior? So he falls on the floor, begins kicking and screaming, and shouts no is the second piece, okay? Then that's the behavior piece. Now we're going to take a look at what happened after. His mother tells him to stop and tries to pick him up. He kicks her and she sends him to his room. So in thinking about those things, we're going to take a look at what possibly would be the reason. What does Angelo not want to do? Does anybody have that thought? What does he not want to do?
Sit at the table.
He doesn't want to sit at the table. He doesn't want to eat for whatever reason, right? So that's what his behavior is telling us. It ended up being a major tantrum, right? So it lets us know that the request was coming to the table was met with major resistance. That is what he did not want to do. So we're going to take a look at what the clues kind of are, and Karen's going to guide us through this one.
So we'll think about Angelo in a minute, but I want to show you another kind of example, and maybe we can as a group try and figure out the before, the behavior, and the after. These are really important, and I know it's hard for people because we're dealing with behavior in the moment, and it's the behavior we focus on, when oftentimes we need to think about what happened before the behavior, because that's what gives us the clue to why the behavior even happened. So this is an example of mom is making cookies with Fabio and his sister Kate. Fabio is stirring the cookie dough and taking bites of the dough. Kate tries to take the spoon away. Fabio grabs the bowl and Kate starts crying. Mom takes the bowl away from Fabio. Fabio throws himself to the floor and begins crying. So if we look at this, what happened before? I mean, the before part, when I look at it, I think of, okay, first they're just making cookies. Sounds like they're making cookies nicely. But it's a brother and a sister, Fabio and Kate. So Fabio is stirring the cookie dough and taking bites. And obviously his sister does not like that and takes the spoon away. And then Fabio grabs the bowl, and the behavior is really Kate starts crying, right? He grabs the bowl. There's a tussle between the two of them. If you can kind of pick this apart and see what happened there, what changes, what might you make so that we don't even get to this point that Fabio's on the floor crying? What would you do differently? Anybody?
Either they each get to do the same thing, they each have their own bowl and spoon, or each of them have a specific task that complements each other.
Right. So thinking about this, I mean, little kids thinking about like making cookies, little kids, you're right, dividing it up kind of. So it's the sense of either each they have their own bowl that they're working on, which would be great. Or like you said, a specific task. You're in charge of stirring, you're in charge of putting in ingredients, like so that they each feel like they're part of the process. But what ends up happening is oftentimes as parents is we don't think that far in advance. And then this big tussle breaks out. And then our reaction is what makes things worse because a kid's on the floor crying and we're thinking, just get up and stop it. So when we really think about this, it really is breaking down the before, and then we can put the other pieces together. That's typically how it works. And it's, again, it's hard to get used to. Just one more example. Kira's mom is giving her a bath. Bath time is one of Kira's favorite routines. Mom tells Kira that it's time to get out of the bath. Kira starts splashing and throwing the water. She begins crying and shaking her head. No. Mom lets Kira play a few more minutes. What do you think about that one? How could we have changed this before piece? The before piece is obviously that if we know bath time is one of their favorite things, and mom is now telling her it's time to get out. Whenever you're doing one of your favorite things, do you like when someone tells you to stop? Probably not. So if she's now telling a child to stop, we kind of would expect a child to not be happy about that, right? How could we redo this so that we don't get the big behavior?
Probably should have warned her she was about to end the bath time.
I love it. Yeah, you might want to say 5 more minutes. You might want to, like Christine was saying, set a timer. Everyone's phone has a timer now. So let me just say that. I always feel like egg timers are great because kids can see them, the whole thing. But there are some really wonderful timers that you can get, even apps, different apps on your phone to be able to time things, and kids can kind of see the clock ticking down. So it's the idea of you warn them, then they know. I know I used to, when my kids were little, say, okay, I'm going to pull the plug on the drain. You can stay till all the water's drained out of the tub. And so obviously, as it kind of went away little at a time, it gets, it gives them the clue that it's almost time to get out till they figure out how to lock it back up, and then you're in the same position. But it's just the idea of really thinking ahead, planning things in advance. Kids will deal with that much better. So behavior can mean a lot of things. If we think about the behavior meaning, Christine, go ahead.
Yeah. If you think about the behavior meaning, it can mean a ton of different things. Here's a list of some things that your child's behavior may be telling you, okay? Remember that we may not like the message, but if we can identify it and understand it, it's gonna help. Because whenever, at least for me, whenever I know there's a reason behind an action, or if I understand the reasoning behind something, it makes a lot more sense to me, and I have a lot more patience for it. And I'm not just talking about children's behavior, but that's a really good thing. The reason why kids do the things they do is because it works. They present challenging behavior because it works. In the story that Karen just read us about Kyra, she was in the bathtub. She said, I want to stay in, basically, and her mom let her. But in her way of wanting to stay in, she was misbehaving. She was splashing water all over the place. She wasn't, maybe for Kyra's mom, that's not a big deal. But, that's definitely not, it definitely worked for her. So that behavior is going to intensify. So figuring out what they're trying to tell you is going to help. So in general, just a couple of things. Behavior can mean, I want you to pay attention to me. That's why we suggest those 10 minutes of play. That's why we drill it home every week and we talk about it. Because if you can give them those 10 minutes, that attention piece, some of that piece gets taken away. Not totally, but some of it. I want that. I want it now. I don't want to wait. I want to play with you. So it's not just attention. It's attention doing what they want to do. Again, why we focus on those 10 minutes. I don't want to stop what I am doing. Kids, as they get a little bit older, I know most of you have at least one little one, but any of you that have like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, you will completely understand the I don't want to stop what I'm doing thing. Because that age group, they absolutely are masters at it, right? And I don't want to clean up. So those are just a few things. So in thinking about what their behavior, if you see a challenging behavior, what might it be telling you, okay? Okay, so once you can identify the meaning of that behavior, you can identify a plan to change it. So, an example for cooking, if you're making a sauce and you're tasting it that it's too bland, you're going to add salt or some spice, right? So that's the same thing we're kind of looking at here. If you see what the problem is, what can be the plan that you come up with? So the three essential parts are use prevention strategies. So that original thing, Courtney, what you just suggested, that 5 more minutes to play and then we're getting out, that's a prevention strategy. Teach your child new ways to communicate or new skills for participating in routines or expectations. So, if Kyra and her mom have had this bath routine before where it's been an issue, if you start with that 5 more minutes, if you want to stay for a little bit longer, you can ask me when the 5 minutes are done, and we'll see if we have time. But you can't just splash. You need to ask me. You have to teach your child those very specific skills. You might even have to say, you need to say more bath time, Mom. That's what I want to hear you. Then you have to be able to honor that. So if you're going to do something like that, say for bath time, and that's just one example, but if you're going to do something like that, you have to honor it. So you might want to give those 5 minutes with actually 10 minutes to go, because then it's part of the plan, right? And make sure your child's challenging behavior won't work. So if Kyra's splashing in the tub, that's a time to drain the water and get her on out of there. And if Kyra's too big to physically do that and you're afraid of, you don't want to, then you just need to drain the water and let her sit in an empty bathtub for a few minutes. She'll be okay. Those are just the 3 things to a plan that kind of will help you to be able to get where you want to get. So this is digging into that prevention piece a little bit more, and I'm not going to read through all of these, but I'm just going to give you a couple of them to think about. You want to try and minimize the possibility that your child will have the challenging behavior. That's what the prevention piece is. So simplify it, oversimplify it. You want to be very specific, but simple. So it's like sit in your seat at the table, right? It's very simple. You can do things like explain what will come, so explain what consequences or what privileges your child might get. Make sure they're in a comfortable place. Use a job chart or rules, as we talked about before. And you want to always be kind of prepared. So some of these pieces are great. Reducing distractions is one I always like to mention, because it's not only reducing distractions for them, it's reducing distractions for you. So if you want, something to happen, you need to be paying attention too. So phones down for you as well. And if you do have to take a call, or if something is happening, you need to admit it the same way you would in a business call. So, if you are sitting down at the table and you're expecting an important call from someone, you need to say, I might get a call from my boss. I'm going to have to leave for a few minutes if that happens. The same way you would at a business meeting if you might have a call from your parent that is elderly. So just thinking about it that way, you need to have a respectful kind of piece. And of course you want to make it fun. So some new skills that you need to actually maybe teach are ask for a turn. Ask if I can have it when you're done. Ask for the object. Say, you have to give exact language. A lot of times we'll say to kids, use your words. And I know we talked about this before, but you need to be very specific. You can say use your words with it, because once you've given them these few, maybe they'll start to figure it out. So use your words. Ask me for help. And for very young ones, anyone who's got one or two, this is help in sign language. For any of you that have never used this term before, I would highly recommend to use help. It does seem to really help. You ask to leave. Kids can ask to leave a place if they aren't able to stay. You may or may not be able to honor it, but at least you can teach them how to ask to leave and to be able to say no, or I don't want to, make a choice and follow a schedule. So that's just a good kind of example of the new skills you might want to teach.
These skills, if you teach them now and kids start to get them now again as they get into their preteen, teen years, it will be so much easier to work with them. You will have so much easier of a time, because you will have already taught them how to ask for help, how to take a turn. All these pieces that kids need to have when they're now starting to deal with all the things that come along with being a teenager. So I just have to throw that in there.
No, I think it's a really good point, Karen, because it is,
Yeah.
again, it's that piece. By the way, just one other thing I
Mhm.
want to throw in there. I have two daughters. I have one that was very spirited and challenging as a young child. Every day, any of the stories you've pretty much heard are about her, and I have a million of them. As an adult or as a teenager, she was actually much easier for me to deal with than my younger one, who always did everything I said and was such a little angel. But she had more issues later on because we hadn't navigated those waters. So be so glad that you're navigating them now. I know that sounds ridiculous, but honestly, I truly believe that it'll be better in the long run. Um, so here's one piece we want to talk about when we can't honor the meeting. Last slide, I said something about they can ask to leave. You may not be able to leave where you are if you're at church or if you're at somewhere where you need to stay. That might not work for you. So if your child says, "I don't want to," when you want him to brush his or her teeth, you want to teach him the new skill of following a schedule or using a job chart. So you can't honor, they have to brush their teeth, right? So you can't honor it, but maybe there's a way that you can teach him something new. And maybe it can be a before and after thing, a first then. So it's, first we brush our teeth, then we get this or whatever it might be. If the child says all done when sitting at the dinner table, and you don't feel like they've eaten enough, or there's a reason why you don't want that to happen, you can say one more bite, then all done. So then again, it's not saying no. So hopefully, it's not going to incite that angry behavior. But at least it's honoring what they're asking for without maybe honoring what you can't honor. So. New responses. So make sure your plan includes new ways for you to respond to your child's behavior. So an example of this is you need to sit in your car seat, but you can hold your bear or hold your blanket. So again, one of those things that if you can't honor, if they say, "I don't want to sit in my car seat," as I said last week, maybe you can, if their car seat's small enough to move, maybe you can move it to a new space. So, okay, Karen, I think this one's you.
So thinking about other new responses, so redirecting kids to use a new skill. So again, I still say these are things that if you can teach your kids now, they will carry them with them. So making sure that you're letting your kids know that sometimes they don't get what they want. And it's not that it's necessarily that they don't get what they want, but you as the adult need to hold your ground, but you still can give choices. So kind of going back to the teeth brushing, I always go back to, do you want to brush your teeth before you put on your pajamas, or do you want to put your pajamas on, like, so you decide if you want to put on your pajamas first or brush your teeth first. But both of those things have to be done. So you're still giving choices. You're still giving a little bit of flexibility, but there are certain things that, again, still have to happen. They still have to do them. So, and I liked this one about telling your child, like, I know this makes you upset. There is nothing wrong with being upset about doing something you don't want to do. That is okay to feel upset. So to be able to say to a child, "I'm so sorry that you're sad about having to brush your teeth. That's too bad. We're still brushing our teeth, right? We're still going to do it, still have to do it. But you definitely can think about that there are things that, again, you can offer those choices so that they feel more in control. That's really a lot of what it is we want kids to feel somewhat in control.
I think Gabby has a question, Karen.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Gabby.
Hi, I do have a question because that happens very often to me about putting the pajamas and brushing their teeth. And I do give them the option, but they still don't want to do it, and I don't know how to make them do it because my kid is addicted to books, so he just won't stop reading, and he feels like, oh, it's time to go to bed, it's time to take a book and sit down and read for an hour, but it's actually already time to go to bed. So I tell him, so are you going to put your pajamas on, or are you going to brush your teeth first? And he just like stays in the book and sometimes doesn't even respond to my questions. So I don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's really hard. So, okay. So a couple of thoughts. One is you might want to start thinking about getting ready for bed a little bit earlier. And I know that a lot of parents hate hearing that, but it does give you a little bit more flexibility of time and still being able to put kids to bed at a decent hour. So sometimes, you know, if you've been getting ready for bed at 8 o'clock, you might want to start at 7:30. I mean, it just depends on what's going on in your house, but thinking about how do you juggle that time a little bit. The other thing is sitting down with your kids at a time when you're not getting ready for bed and saying, let's make a chart, a schedule of our routine before we go to bed. What are the things that we have to make sure we get done before we go to bed? And so you make that list. And then what you say is the last thing on the list is reread a book. So if the whole thing is that they want to read, all these other things have to be done first before you get to read that book. So yes, you can read. I want you to be able to read books. It's hard to tell kids not to. It's hard when you've got bookworms where you're trying to like get them out of a book because that's the greatest thing in the world for that incorporated books. But to think about that's kind of the, in a sense, the reward of doing all the other things is that they get to read. And maybe if you start earlier, he can actually read longer before he actually goes to bed. But he's got to get all the things done off the list and checked off the list first.
And maybe even allow him to check them off the list. So if you can do it on a
Yes.
whiteboard, that would be fantastic to give him that. How old is your son?
One is 7 and the other one is turning 4.
Okay. So is this your 4-year-old or your 7-year-old?
Well, the 4 is turning to copy the 7,
Okay.
but it's
Okay.
mainly the 7. Like I know if I get the 7 one to stop reading and go do what he needs to, the other one will follow.
So
Yeah.
because he's 7, that gives you enough time to really talk about it with him beforehand. And I would talk about it with him, probably not with the 4-year-old there. I would just have a conversation with him about what you're feeling about bedtime. And I think you can say, if you want to read for a really long time, then we need to start earlier because that's the way you're going to be able to read that. But the only way you're going to get to the point where you can read for as long as you want to, and I'm not bothering you and coming in your room every 5 minutes to say it's time to brush your teeth, you need to have a really open and honest conversation with him. Like, this is what we expect you to do. This is what you want to check off each night. And then the sooner you do it, the sooner you get to your book and you're able to read. And if we do it quickly, you can read for longer. It's your call and your choice because it really is, right? That would be my thought to add to what Karen says, though I completely agree with Karen's thoughts too.
It sounds pretty good. I feel excited to try it.
Oh,
Hopefully
yay.
it'll work.
Yeah, I think the more structure you can put in a child's life, the better it is for you and for them. It's not always possible in every family's life. I've seen families with lots of different crazy schedules that make it really hard to keep a regular routine. But the best that you can do, if it's possible, is to stick with, I say kind of 3 routines. One is a morning routine. What do we do when we get up in the morning? So actually writing it out, having a schedule of what do we do when we get up in the morning. One is what do you do to get ready for bed at night, which is really important. And then I try to encourage families to really have dinner together if they can. So what do we do when we're having dinner together? Even starting from like prepping dinner all the way through cleaning up dinner. So if you can have those 3 schedules in your home and place them, seriously write them out on big poster board or whatever and place them near those areas. So, you know, going to bed and getting up in the morning might be upstairs in a hallway or in a bathroom where everyone's using. So it is something that you just see. It's something that you see every day and every morning. So, and obviously the dinner one, you know, put it in your kitchen right next to your table. It's just, again, it's something that if you can try it and get used to it, I think you'll be in a better place. Okay, so I'm going to show you, we talked a couple of weeks ago, well, yeah, it was 3 weeks ago, I believe, we saw this video. I'm going to show it to you again and see if you are able to notice some things about behavior that's happening here. And I'm going to pray that it works. All right, we got 10 seconds and then we're going inside. Ready? 10. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, next side. Come on, stand up. Stand up. Look into the door. I know it's kind of hard to watch. What did you notice, or what did you see when you think about the behavior? If you look at the kind of the before, the during, and the after. So what did we see before? At the very beginning of this clip. We can kind of see it just right here in this still, right? There's a little kid on the ground, does not want to go in that building, right? So even before it gets really out of hand, it's already not going well, right? And so what do we see in the behavior during? Like, what do we see the mom do? What did the mom do once we saw this behavior? He's on the ground and he does not want to get up. What does she start to do as the parent? She's doing the counting thing. Now, mind you, for some kids and some families, that works. Obviously, from her point, when I watched her, it's not working. It is just not something that's working with this kiddo. So then as the behavior escalates, you can see the behavior escalate. She kind of grabs him and pulls him into the building, right? Does it get any better? No, it kind of gets worse. So when you see that, what do you think that she could have done different? What would have been an idea of something to do different? Anybody got any ideas? Okay, you don't have to have them right this minute. I'm just trying to give you an opportunity. I mean, personally, when I see this, first of all, I know the whole story, so I don't want to jump in and like give everything away. But when I first saw this, the very first time, I thought, I wonder why he doesn't want to go to the library. That was my first wondering. It's just, he does not want to go into that library. I wonder what it is. Is there something that he doesn't like about the library? Is it that he doesn't want to go in? Is it that he was doing something that he really liked beforehand, and so he didn't want to stop what he was doing and then have to go in? Like, I had a lot of questions, is kind of how I looked at it. So if we look at the next one, I want you to just kind of hear these parents talk a little bit about the struggles that they're having with their child, because it kind of gives you an idea as a parent that you're not alone. And I hope these videos can.
When we went out anywhere, just going out, we just decided to stay home because it was easier, or taking turns going out, or I wait for you to come home from work. And
we couldn't even go in and out of Publix or Walmart because we couldn't get through the door without having a tantrum. Certainly couldn't go to a restaurant and sit down and have a dinner for a half hour. Just simple everyday life things we couldn't do.
We became isolated, not even eating dinner at home or giving the kids baths or simple things at home. So we ended up just developing routines around Brenton, and that was what we did, you know. I think everybody revolved around him.
I guess what made Brendan tough before PBS was that we had no way to communicate with him. We didn't know what he wanted. He was frustrated, we were frustrated, and it was just a lack of communication, of understanding why he was doing what he was doing, and then how to resolve it. Is probably what made it the toughest for me, so she just didn't know just how to communicate with him.
I think it was so hard when he would just fall down, and I had to carry him in places, carry him out of places. We were spectacles. People just watched us, they judged us.
Has anyone ever felt that way with your own kids? Has it ever gotten to that extreme with your own kids? You know, it's okay if you don't want to share, but I do remember when my son was really little that the grocery store was just not the place that he could manage. And there were times when, I probably shared this story earlier, but we left a full cart of groceries and just walked out because it just got to be too much. Also too, I just wanted to throw in that it says Brendan before PBS. PBS is what's called positive behavior supports, which is exactly what we're talking about in this whole training. So they went through a kind of a different program, but it's the same concepts and materials that we've been talking about in this training. So obviously this family struggled with trying to find a way to have their child fit into their normal daily lives. And they ended up changing their whole lives to fit around the child, which I can only imagine as a parent was probably really tough. So we're watching Love Alone. Hear more from them.
I guess when we missed out on activities that our family members were having, I guess you felt defeated, depressed.
I felt
so far-
abandoned
Yeah.
by the family. I
Yeah.
felt like our family wasn't supporting us, and our entire family was excluded from an event because of our child. And I didn't think that they were helping us to know what to do with our kid. I mean, if anything, they had some pretty tough comments about, well, maybe you should consider an institution. And some of these things are well-meaning. They actually meant well by saying these things about our child, but none of it was really good advice.
I guess you have a lot of self-pity. You're like, you're kind of like, I can't believe this is what my life has turned into. And it's like, maybe that's what we felt the most is like, how did this happen? How do we go from where we were, 3 years ago or 4 years ago to where we are, today, not being able to leave our house. So that was probably the worst feeling.
Other people looked at us like there was something wrong with our parenting skills.
Certainly before PBS, people, you could just see it. You go to the grocery store and you have somebody tell you, this is the way you should do it, or, your child's doing that because whatever, you're not spanking him, or you give him a little spanking and he'll be fine, or whatever, So you have all those, everybody has their own opinion on how you should raise your child without even knowing what your situation is. So
I think strangers always gave us advice when we were out, and our family always gave us advice, and it was somewhere always along the line of discipline, punishment.
Have any of you experienced family members trying to give you thoughts, ideas, ways to discipline that maybe you didn't necessarily agree with?
Yes.
Yes? Yeah, I think that's probably a struggle for a lot of parents. I feel like that being able to, as a parent yourself, kind of stand your ground and know what feels right to you. I give this couple a lot of credit because some of the things that family members were telling them were just kind of, to me, a little crazy, a little way out of line. But it's interesting because, like she just said, a lot of them were telling them like discipline. But I think what probably was really happening, it was probably a lot of punishment. And punishment doesn't teach a new skill. It doesn't teach children what to do. And I think that that's probably the biggest struggle when I watch these videos and I see this couple and I hear them, and it makes me think that, especially when you're the parent, you want your children to do well, right? I truly believe in my heart that every parent loves their child to the nth degree. It's just that that's your baby. And so for other people to be telling you to do things that you don't agree with is really hard to not stop families from being part of your life. So what the next video is going to show you, after this family goes through a lot of supportive training and understanding their child a little bit better, literally uses the techniques that we talk about in this program. I mean, really specifically, very purposefully use the strategies that are in here. And I want to show you what it looks like after and how they're able to go to the library.
No, I just happened to be away from my child.
It's the library. Take this. That one and this one. Yeah. Okay. I forgot my library card.
So did you happen to notice any of the techniques that they may have used? Did you see any of the things that she was doing, the mom was doing?
She was whispering, but I think she was like telling him in advance what they were going to be doing. Is that accurate?
Yes. So did you also see what she had with her, the mom? She had little cards, and on those little cards were pictures of step by step what they were going to be doing in the library. So what she had done was worked with them ahead of time, talking about what was expected at the library. They had created cards so that he knew step by step by step what they were going to do in the library. So if you notice when he went in, he went right to the little play thing you do. And she looked at him and she gave him gave him a pointed finger saying 1. What she was telling him was, remember, first we pick out books. First we have to pick out the books. So he said, okay. And he got up and he went to go get the books because he knew that after they check out their books, he could come back and play with that. So she had done a lot of work in prepping him to go to the library. It's probably what happened in the first video is probably because there was no expectation of what was going to happen there. And without any expectation, things just spin out of control. He didn't know why he was there. He couldn't do what he wanted to do when he was there. But now that she went through the process of really explaining to him what was going to happen and giving him cards that reminded him of what was going to happen, he could move through the different activity and have some successes. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, I'm going to show you the last one where they interview the parents and talk about what they actually did to prepare for this.
That with PBS, we've been able to go back to some of the things and just look really normal out and just in public and restaurants. We've gone to eat and
Baseball game.
we went to a baseball game. We go to dinner. We have goals, little goals of things that we want to do that it's like, okay, let's see how we can accomplish this. And then we just go ahead and figure it out and get our pictures together and
Get our social stories made.
stories. And he said, now we're going to do this. Figured out which things have worked for our family. And I guess that's part of the PBS process, is making it work for you. And then we use it with Brendan. We do first den schedules with Brendan, which always work. Our first den schedule, the first ones we use were, first do something hard for you, and then French fries, because that was always, a reward. And then our first den schedules are just like a regular routine that he can cope with. And we've been able to get away from some of the schedules too. Not completely, because he always needs them, but he's just real comfortable. As soon as he learns his routine, we don't have to resort to a picture for every little thing. And
The first couple of weeks of learning how to say things in a positive way was very difficult, and then you couldn't get a whole sentence out without stopping and realizing you were saying something negative. So
we had to correct ourselves, each other.
Yeah. So I think after the first couple of weeks we finally got the hang of it, and it's interesting now to see other parents with other kids and listen to how they talk to their children. It's like, that used to be me, and to see the reactions of the children when they're speaking to them that way.
And then we know what they're doing.
Yeah.
We're like, we know what you're doing. You're telling him don't stop, no, and you're not giving him any direction, and you're not helping him, and you're not telling him what to do exactly. And so we see why your child is like that. But, my child has got problems, and he's not like that. Biggest cause of celebration is having a simple day. When you know the alternative, a simple day without a tantrum is a happy day. It's happy.
So their son does have he has some delays and slight disabilities. And so they had an extra kind of hurdle that they had to move through to really get him to the place that he's at now. But the thing that I find really interesting with this couple is that they really purposefully worked on getting these things into place. And so I think that's the place that, and what they talked about too was after they purposely put those things into place with a lot of supports, a lot of teaching new skills, a lot of schedules, a lot of routine kinds of things, eventually they don't need to use the cards anymore and the things anymore, because now the child has just made that part of their routine. And so that's truly what happens when you start to use these techniques. Eventually, you won't need to have those schedules written up because they just start to fall into being routine. But the initial work is worth it. It truly is. Any other thoughts or ideas as we talk about anybody else anything you want to say, you're welcome to add in here. We're good? Okay. Okay. So we sent you in the email these 26 phrases to calm an angry child. The thing that's nice with this is it truly does give you like some really good words to use. And they're words that you can use in the sense of they're positives. They're ways to speak to your child in a way that is not a no, don't, you can't, it really is thinking about that. So I would say making sure that you all got that. So go ahead and, pull that up and just read through them just so that you can remind yourself of things that you might want to think about saying different. You might even want to pick one or two out that you think are things that you might need today or tomorrow. Just saying. The other thing that we provided you was this family routine guide. I'm not sure if everyone got it. It was in the email as well. So there's a link to it. We're also going to send it to you. We're going to send you a hard copy if we have your address. So yeah, so Christine's holding it up. So the thing with the family routine guide and why I love it is that it thinks of almost every scenario that you can think of. It really does go through and talk about very specific things that can happen and what might happen and how you can react to it as the parent. So again, when you're using this, like thinking about times that you might have already experienced some challenging behavior with your child, if you can kind of look through that list of things in there, and it's a pretty thick family routine guide. It's got a lot of scenarios that you probably didn't even think of. It really gets you to start thinking about why your child might be having that behavior. What do you think the child is trying to tell you? It really can give you what you can do to prevent the challenging behavior. So again, thinking before the situation even happens, what do I need to put in place? What you can do if the challenging behavior actually does happen. And then it really gets you to think about what new skills you're teaching. What are you teaching that can be helpful to a child? I really think that if you can think about the replacement, if I don't want them to do this, what do I want them to do? So I try to, when I think of kids, when I work with children and families, I think of, okay, mom or dad, this is what your child is doing. So what would you like them to do? And then when I hear about what they say they'd like them to do, then I say, okay, how are you going to teach that? What's the way that you're going to be able to teach what you want them to do? And so then it really is starting to think about age appropriate kinds of things. So kind of like we talked about earlier, that 7-year-olds can do different kinds of things than 4-year-olds can do. And 5-year-olds can do different kinds of things than 2-year-olds can do. And so you really have to kind of know different ages and what kids are capable of doing. But I want you to really think about teaching that skill. kids don't just come with this stuff built in. If you think your kids are just going to grow up and then they just learn all this, it's not how it happens. They learn it by somebody teaching it. And so, so I'm not going to have you get in pairs, but I guess I'm thinking like as you're moving forward, the last little piece in your workbook is really thinking about and starting to do some planning for your family plan. So thinking about your entire family and what are the things. So I don't know if you've seen on the last activity is activity 29, and it says what your child does during whatever the routine is and why you think that they're doing it. So again, knowing the why is important. And then you have to think about what can I do to prevent the problem? What can I do if the behavior occurs? And what is the new skill I need to teach? So again, this kind of falls back on you as the parent to do a lot of this, but you're building a really great foundation. And that's where, if you can kind of take that away with this, from this whole program, it's really thinking about, you know, having that foundation that you have, that you're creating for your child and family.
I have,
Are there thoughts or anything that anyone wants to add?
well, I know we're over time, but yesterday my daughter went to preschool for the first time since COVID.
Yes.
And she had a great day, but then she came home and lost it for about 2 hours. And the impetus for why she lost it was that I wouldn't let her watch TV. But I know that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was she just had this like massive upheaval in her life, and I don't know, maybe missed me, maybe didn't, maybe missed school, whatever. But I'm trying to think of what I can do today to mitigate this. Like, I know she's going to do the same because she's like, well, I didn't get TV. And normally she gets like 30 minutes of TV. And I'm like, but I don't want every time you come home from school, you just watch 30 minutes of TV. Like, I want family time. I miss you. So I don't know how to like, I'm trying to plan ahead. I just don't know what to do.
I
Right.
would probably, I have a thought. I would probably start from the time that she gets home from school, even if, are you picking her up from school?
Yeah.
I would have like a conversation about what you expect. So you maybe even make like little pictures of it. When we come home, you have to talk to mom for whatever time you, for 10 minutes. I'm going to set it on my phone. And then while I'm making dinner, you can watch TV for a half an hour. But first we're going to do this. And so that she knows exactly what to expect. Because then it also can be a time that you can set up. And that way, if there's another time where she can't watch TV because it's just not a possibility, then you can set the stage for it not being maybe the same every time. So maybe, in another 2 weeks or whatever is happening, you're going to say, we have to go to the grocery store first. And we're going to buy groceries. And then we're going to go home and talk, or whatever it might be. Kind of make up scenarios that you can make it work, so that you can switch up the times so that it doesn't become like such a routine as that I have to talk for 10 minutes. And that's just one suggestion. You could do whatever it is that you want her to be able to do. My guess is also she was probably pretty tired because she was the first time in school where she was actively playing and she was, outside. I mean, I now go outside for a day in the office when I, my work 1 or 2 days a week in an office instead of in my home. And I'm like exhausted, like the physical toll that it's, so it could also be that she was super tired. But I think if you make it really clear and make it something that can work for you, but change it up so it's not the exact same every single day. Do you have anything to add to that, Karen?
I was just going to say, it's not uncommon for kids to spend their day at school keeping it all together. Like they're hanging there, they're keeping it together, they're doing what the teacher says, they're playing nicely with their friends, they are keeping it together. And then they get to the safety of their home where they know you as the parent is going to love them no matter what, no matter how they act, and they explode and they just let it all out. So that's not unusual. And again, kind of like, I mean, to me, it's like not, I don't think I'd worry so much about that, but I think the setting up a routine when she comes home is a great idea. I know myself, I mean, everybody's different. Everyone's temperament is different. And so some people who, if she's at school and she's giving it her all and she's behaving and she's interacting and she's doing all the things she's supposed to do, she might come home and be like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to be with anyone. I don't want to do this with anyone. I just want to chill out. Think of how many adults do that when they come home from work. They're like, okay, don't bug me. Don't bother me. I just need to be by myself. She may need that. She may need some time to just unwind before she engages with a conversation with you.
It's true.
She may, I think you can ask her. I know that that might sound silly to some people, but I think you could ask her, like, what do you think you need when you come home from school? Here's a bunch of different things that I've thought of, but maybe she has something completely different. Like she might have something that you didn't even think of that she really wants to do or that she needs when she first comes home. So I would ask her and then draw it out on a big sheet and make it when you come home from school. Here's your when you get home from school routine, and this is what you do when you come home.
Good.
I know it sounds like a lot, but I think give it a go. See what works. I think she's smarter than you think.
Oh, I know she's smarter than I think.
Anybody else got anything they want to throw out there? I know we've loaded you up on a lot of stuff. I don't want to push people. Know that Christine and I are available if you feel like you want to talk or you've got a situation that arises that you think you just want to bounce it off of someone. We are available through the Great Start Collaborative and Help Me Grow. We have care coordinators that are available that can talk with parents about these kinds of issues. So there's lots of resources that are available, and I want to make sure that people know that they're available and make use of them. Don't be shy. Please don't.
And make sure you get your address to Millie. Millie, we want you with their
Yes.
addresses, right? We want to get you books. We want to get you children's books. We want to get you this thing printed out, as well as the family resource guide printed out for you so that you have that ready to go. We want to send you stuff. So we'll maybe send you some room tip cards too, which are some little cards that you can put on your diaper bag or purse or somewhere. They're just little cards that we have on a carabiner, and they give you little activities that you can do without any materials. You can do them in the grocery store. You can do them in, line at Walmart, wherever you are. There's little activities that you can do with your kids. And on the back side, it has some why you're doing it, what it's doing in their brain, what parts of their brains you are actually building by playing little games and talking with your child. So we want to send you some of those as well. So please reach out to Millie and get your address. Millie, you unmuted. Do you want to say something?
No, I was going to say something, but then I just put my email address in the chat for everyone.
Okay, perfect. Yep, just send it to her because we want to get you stuff. We got goodies. We want to give away goodies. So
Definitely.
thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you all. We really appreciate you attending. We appreciate everything that you've shared, I know a lot of personal stories that you've shared and information. We really do appreciate that you've attended, and thank you.
And you're doing an amazing job for your kids. An amazing job. So well done, you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Have a terrific week.
Have a good afternoon. Bye, Gabby.